Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Wednesday, April the 23rd. Zach Ewing here with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris. And we are going to do our Saints Insider mock draft. It is NFL Draft Eve on this Wednesday. And so we had kind of like a wild and crazy mock that we did in a group text, and we decided that it wasn't even realistic enough to continue.
Well, there's only one wild and crazy component of it, really. It was a player that none of us anticipate being there.
Yeah, we'll explain it as we go. But also, before we get into the mock draft, I think we should mention Mickey Loomis. We actually all just came from Mickey Loomis pre-draft press conference at the Saints practice facility on Airline Drive or Airline Highway. And I guess the news is that there is no news. I mean, we all expected something on Derek Carr. We got nothing on Derek Carr.
You will get nothing and like it, Mickey Loomis said.
We didn't like it.
I'm paraphrasing.
We didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, he basically went into today saying, I'm going to tell you that Derek Carr is dealing with a shoulder injury, and I'm going to tell you nothing else, which is his prerogative, his way to answer questions. I think as a fan base, I would be understandably upset about that, wanting at least a little clarity on what happened. From Mickey's standpoint, I get it a little bit. You know, he doesn't want to tip his hand on literally anything before the draft. And if he's openly answering a bunch of questions about Derek Carr's health and his future with the team, then, you know, that's going to diminish their ability to maybe move around the draft, kind of hope somebody's going to be there. If they're like, well, we really want to take a quarterback, and the other teams are like, well, we got to get in front of the Saints to get one. So, like, I get that from his perspective, but I think he could have been a lot more open about what's happened so far, and he just chose to really not answer anything about it.
Yeah, you got to hope that he addresses this. I mean, typically we won't talk to him again until right before training camp. So, I mean, you hope that he'll talk about this at some point shortly after the draft. But I mean, I don't expect him to, but you know, maybe he will. Hopefully, he will.
It's your starting quarterback. Right. It's a guy you committed to $150 million over 4 years to.
Yeah,
you know, this is a huge deal. I understand. Like, sure, he doesn't want to make it a big thing, but it is a big thing. It's a huge news story, and regardless of how they feel about it and how they don't want to deal with it, it's the fact of the matter is it's here, and if you don't answer questions about it, it's going to lead to even more speculation about it anyway.
Right.
Just kicking the can down the road, man.
That's what he does. The thing Mickey said specifically, Matt, was that we hope to have clarity very soon on, I think that's verbatim. He said, we'll have clarity very soon on the Carr situation, which almost makes me think that he personally and the organization do have clarity on it, but it's what Luke said. We're not going to say it publicly just yet because that would remove the smokescreen that we have for ourselves in this draft. That's the optimistic way. That's probably the Mickey defending way of looking at this. Do you think that's actually what's happening?
I don't know, maybe, but you could have still answered questions of when they knew. That's not tipping away their hand. Like, right. Well, what's the value? What's the harm of saying, "Oh yeah, we knew about it April 10th or 11th"? The story broke on 11th. We found out April 8th. Like, oh no, the Saints restructured him without knowing. Like, how could they? Carr's camp is the one that informed them of the decision. So, I think at Carr's camp anyway. I don't know. It's NFL GMs and coaches are just paranoid, I think often for the sake of being paranoid, and paranoia was on full display here today.
You guys remember that song, Flagpole Sitta?
Yeah.
I heard that on the radio.
Paranoid, everybody's coming to get me.
That popped right into my head when Matt said that. It's the theme song of NFL GMs on Draft Week.
Harvey Danger?
Yes.
Harvey Danger?
Sounds right.
I think that was on Now That's What I Call Music 1, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Okay, so that aside,
that's a happy birthday
now
gift.
You guys are old.
That reference was a happy birthday gift to my friend Catherine Terrell. Happy birthday, Catherine.
There you go.
I think she has like 40 Now That's What I Call Music albums at home.
That was number 1.
Was it her birthday?
It is her birthday. Happy birthday, Catherine.
Okay, if I need to.
She turns 45 today.
Wow.
And we're just going to put that out there. Let people run with that speculation.
All right. Speaking of speculation, that's all we're doing here because Mickey wouldn't say anything. One thing Mickey did say, Rod, as we launch into this mock draft is that this will not change the way the Saints are going to draft. That seems very hard to believe if Derek Carr is actually injured and is not going to play this year. That feels extremely unlikely. But that's what he said.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, like, with the number 9 pick, like, if you don't like any of those quarterbacks, I don't think you all of a sudden start liking them more if you're not going to get Carr. But I do think, like, in that second pick, I mean, I think it definitely changes, like, some of the things you may be willing to do or not do with that pick, so.
Yeah. And for our mock draft today, we're only going through the first 9 picks, but we will leave a little bit of time at the end for discussion about what the Saints might do in this scenario with their second pick at number 40. And they may be moving up higher than that. I think that's definitely a possibility. So let's launch into the mock draft. Here's what we did. There's 4 of us up here, so we each took 2 of the first 8 picks. Luke had the first pick and 5th pick. I had number 2 and 6. Matt 3 and 7. Rod 4 and 8. And then we all kind of said, okay, given this situation, here's what we would do with the Saints at number 9. So let's launch into it. Number 1 pick, no suspense here, Luke.
Miami quarterback Cam Ward. I think that everybody knows at this point that's what's going to happen. I had the easy job picking that one first. So, no surprises there.
Whether that's the right pick or not is another question, but that's what they're going to do.
I think if you're – I personally think, and I think a lot of people around the league, not consensus obviously, but I think a lot of people view him as pretty easily the best quarterback in this class. The creativity, the arm talent,
The improv skills.
Yeah. I think he's a modern NFL quarterback who can do everything that you want a quarterback in the NFL to do.
It's a team that's desperate for a quarterback. So
Correct.
Right. Their current option is Will Levis, who the lasting image of the Tennessee Titans 2024 season is Brian Callahan yelling, like, what the F are you doing at Will Levis multiple times.
In like week 2.
Yeah. So, like, there's, easy. It's going to be Cam Ward, number 1.
Okay, so I had number 2. Equally as easy, I think Travis Hunter is the pick for the Cleveland Browns. I just, generational talent. You could call him the next Dion. People have compared him to Shohei Ohtani, which I think has some cross-sport relevance just because he basically saves you a roster spot, especially if you believe he can play both ways at least part of the time.
This is like going to be, because I think you're right. I think the Browns are going to take Travis Hunter number 2, but like I think the fascinating thing is what's going to be his primary position, because I don't think he's going to be able to play 100 snaps a game like he did in college. I think the NFL it requires way too much for one person to master one position. Where it's going to be you play full-time at one position, you have a package at the other one.
Not to mention the effort level required and the focus required to do that for 100 plays a game just doesn't seem realistic. But, I mean, he's a corner, right, Matt? Like, first and foremost.
Yes, but I think the Browns GM came out and said they view him more as a receiver.
Right.
They probably need a receiver more.
That's a fact. And like, I can't remember who put this out there. It might have been Bruce Feldman, The Athletic. Somebody put out like a whole big thing on Travis Hunter this week, and a lot of teams see him first and foremost as a corner where he's really special, and they see like the glimpses of really special at receiver too, but he's not nearly as polished there, and it's probably because he spent a lot more time at Colorado and Jackson State for that matter working at corner, and then he's just like so good at receiver he can get away with a lot of stuff in college. He probably won't be able to get away with it at the pro level. But like if you make him a primary receiver and then you work with that, like he's the type of athlete who you could probably imagine picking up that stuff fairly quickly and being a very good receiver and also giving you some depth at corner. But I think generally more teams probably view him primarily as a corner who can also fill in at receiver. I think that's the most fascinating part about Travis Hunter as a prospect.
Yeah, he does. He did come out and say, like, he wants to do both of them, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
What
probably not realistic.
did he say? He's going to quit football if he
Yeah,
can't?
he's-
Yeah.
yeah, he's
Well,
gonna
I don't think he's going to be walking away from that money.
I also think he should want to play receiver, just given the contract disparity between the two. I mean, if he's forced to choose, and he is a superstar receiver, like that'll get you paid more than being a superstar corner. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think he'll do a little bit of both at least, but it's interesting because the Browns obviously need a quarterback also. But with Ward off the board, this guy feels like an obvious number one quality pick. I think it's you can write those two in pen: Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, the top two, and then there's a third guy who I think a lot of people consider to be a number one caliber talent, and the New York Giants have the third pick. They also need a quarterback. They've been rumored with Shedeur Sanders a little bit, but Matt, you had the number 3 pick for the Giants.
Can we talk about how long this pick took? Like, this is like...
Actually, the Giants had to
Matt was
forfeit
on
this pick. because
Matt was on the
didn't-
clock for 3 hours this morning.
Group texted like,
I would have missed the turning clock
It was the
several
Vikings.
times over.
Was it the Vikings like
They did, yeah.
15, 20 years ago?
who missed
their turn.
Well,
their
I
draft pick.
had Mickey. I knew Mickey was going to be in the afternoon. Thought it was going to be a lighter morning.
You unplugged.
I unplugged a little bit. I should have.
But eventually, at long last, the Giants took.
Abdul Carter from Penn State. I consider quarterback there. I think do you guys think it's better for the Saints draft at number 9 if the Giants take a quarterback there, or do you think it's more advantageous?
I think it's 100% better if anybody takes a quarterback besides Cam Ward before the Saints.
Yeah, I think it's better for them at number 9, but I think if they're, we'll talk about their second pick. But if they plan on taking a quarterback with their second pick, it might make that a little more challenging and maybe force their hand at 9. I don't know.
Yeah, but still went with the best player available. Him across from Thibodeau, really good pass rushing duo. Giants defense wasn't trash last season. It was okay.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I think they're building something there.
Was the strength of their team.
This is the strength of their team that didn't have many strengths. This coaching staff and front office is just in super hot water. They need it to work. And so if you're not sold on a quarterback at 3, and they signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, so I just see them picking a phenomenal pass rusher who's very good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the source in my mind right now, but somebody said there was a rumor that they were shopping Thibodeau, which would even more strengthen the idea that Abdul Carter is their preferred pick.
Yeah. Well, they also got Brian Burns too.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
right,
true,
of course.
true.
And they paid a pretty big price for Brian Burns, and Thibodeau's kind of one of those guys who puts up a lot of numbers, but maybe he's not like he's like the opposite of Chase Young, right? Where he's got all the numbers, but it's.
I was going to say he reminds you of Chase Young because he's been a little bit disappointing since he's
It's
come
being
into
a high
the
draft
pros.
pick.
Yeah, he's just got the sacks to show for it.
Yeah.
But I do think that these 3 are going to be. I think we could write in pen that these are going to be the top 3 picks for sure. But I do think there's a chance there's a flip flop at 2 and 3. Wouldn't surprise me if the Browns took Abdul Carter and the Giants took Travis Hunter.
Abdul Carter creating like this monster pass rush with Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
It'd be terrifying for opposing offenses. But I don't know, Rod, these are 3. I think if you had to pick 3 guys who would be number 1 pick caliber, these are the 3.
Yeah, with that,
They'll be gone.
yeah, without a doubt, everything, the board fell like we thought it would when it finally fell. It fell like we thought it would.
So having said that, you had to wait an hour for Matt to make his pick, but at number 4, you also went chalk for the Patriots.
Yeah, I went with Will Campbell. I thought Matt was going to throw me a curveball. I said maybe that's. But anyway, I had Will Campbell like just ready to hit send, and I just think that's a need for the team. I think everybody kind of has the Patriots going with the offensive line, and I just figure Will Campbell's the best of this bunch. So it's I thought it was kind of an easy choice.
Feels like a Mike Vrabel kind of guy too.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're in that spot, you just take the best big guy available.
I think so. I mean, I don't think that's a bad strategy at all. Like we'll say it 100 times in this podcast between now and the start of the season, but like a big reason for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl last year is they had 4 Pro Bowlers on their offensive line, and the other guy signed a $10 million contract this offseason. Like, they had a really, really good offensive line. That's how you build successful offenses in the NFL. Like, you can have all the studs on the outside you want. You can have, I mean, obviously, like, you need a really good quarterback. But if you got a really good quarterback behind a shaky offensive line, then like problems start to happen there too. It's crucial to building a good team.
And for the Patriots specifically, you have Drake May, who seems like he's going to be a very good quarterback, and so you've got to keep him upright and keep that development on track.
Campbell's interesting because he was considered like a top 5 pick before his final season at LSU. Then he kind of slipped. Like, opinion of him dropped a little bit to the point where he wasn't even the number 1 tackle, or at least not consensus number 1 tackle on the draft board. And now he's back where, maybe he was the whole time or should have been the whole time. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us would be surprised if he's a top 5 pick.
yeah. Okay, so those are the first 4 picks. And I think those 4, especially if you look at like betting odds and things, I mean, those 4 are locked in or very close to it, barring some huge surprise tomorrow night. So you have the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward, the Browns take Travis Hunter, the Giants take Abdul Carter, and the Patriots take Will Campbell. So that's the top 4. That brings us to the first pivot point of the draft, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5. We will get to that, but first let's take a 30-second break and be back on the Saints Insider.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
All right, back on the Saints Insider. Okay, so we're through the first 4 picks, and that brings us to the first pivot point here. Luke, you have the Jacksonville Jaguars pick at 5, and here's the context with Jacksonville. They've been linked to Mason Graham for months now. I mean, like, almost before Cam Ward was linked to the Titans, Mason Graham was linked to the Jaguars at number 5. Like, that was going to be the pick. I can't remember if the GM said something or if it was just how bad their defense was last year that they needed him. But all of a sudden in the last week or two, there's been all this Ashton Genty steam that the Jaguars would just take him. There's also been some Teteroa McMillan steam, the wide receiver from Arizona. So now all of a sudden this is the spot where this draft could change. They could trade this pick. They could this is where truly the first pick is. Thursday night we're going to go, what is Jacksonville going to do? So where did you land and why did you land there?
Yeah, all of that is correct. And I still went with Mason Graham. I considered Ashton Genty for the spot because there has been a lot of smoke about him lately. I considered Tet McMillan because I've seen some stuff tying him to Liam Cohen and Liam Cohen kind of likening him to Mike Evans, who he had in Tampa last year. But ultimately, I think Graham is easily the best interior defender in this class. Somebody who can play a big part in like turning around a soft run defense. They're already really talented on the edges. If you add the kind of game wrecker in the middle, it can make their defensive front pretty fearsome, in my opinion. So there's a lot of different directions this could go, but I feel like ultimately it's going to wind up with Mason Graham wearing the Jaguars teal.
All right, thoughts, guys? You think that's the way it goes, or is McMillan or Genty too tempting to pass up here?
I think they traded out the spot.
I do think that's a legitimate possibility, too.
I know it's been quiet on that front, but I could see the Bears, Ben Johnson's first year, trying to make a splash. Go get him a versatile playmaker. Their running back's DeAndre Swift, who fell out of favor when Ben Johnson was in Detroit. And so I could see them really trying to swing for the fences. That GM likes to do that anyway. Or just, the Montez Sweat trade, the Chase Claypool trade, which was a disaster, but hey, they went for it. So I could see them trading back, and the Jags GM is young, hip, savvy, and trading back's all the rage these days, except for a certain franchise. So
yeah, I could see that too. I really
Genty
do
being this pick, whether it's the Jags or not.
I really do wonder whether I think it depends on what teams think about Genty or Graham in this spot, where they really are convinced that they're going to be like star players. Because I think those two are probably the last ones where you could really see teams try to be aggressive and make a move up. Because the thing we keep hearing over and over and over about this draft is that, like you alluded to earlier, is that the talent just kind of flattens out once you get past like the top 5 picks, and you can get a very similar player at like 22 than you can at 10.
But what that creates is a bunch of teams willing to trade back, and maybe not so many willing to trade up.
Correct.
Except for the top 5. And that's why, like, I actually agree with this, and it's hard to incorporate trades into mock drafts. So we just sort of stuck with, I think actually last year when we did this, we did have a trade. We had the Vikings trading up to take J.J. McCarthy at number 5. But the Jaguars are interesting because they could, I mean, Travis Etienne was not good last year. Like, they could just take Genty. They could also take Mason Graham, but I think it's a trade possibility. I will say this from a Saints perspective. If Jacksonville does not take Mason Graham, that should perk the Saints' ears up, because all of a sudden I think there's a legitimate chance that he slips all the way to being available at 9 in that scenario. You guys agree?
That's who Kat had in her ESPN mock draft.
So he did fall, in the ESPN mock draft. He fell to number 9. Okay, so here's where it was my pick next, and this is where we sort of had to go back and make things a little more realistic, because I went ahead. I was assuming in my head Luke was going to take Genty. And so I was looking at the Raiders' needs, and I was down to Armand Membu or Tet McMillan for the Raiders. And I started looking at their depth chart, and I look at wide receiver, and their number 1 wide receiver is Jacoby Myers. And I don't even know who their number 2 wide receiver is. I mean, they don't.
Is it Zay Flowers?
They are
Zay
desperate
Jones?
for help at receiver.
Zay Jones.
And so I just typed into the chat where we were doing this. I said McMillan. I'm going to take McMillan. Well, what that did was it created the scenario where Genty falls to the Saints. We talked about it. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, like, because if neither the Jags or Raiders takes Genty, somebody's trading up to get him. He's not going to be there at 9. That just doesn't feel realistic.
Well, also, we just don't want to be in a situation where we're all like, we're taking Ashton Genty at 9.
Yeah.
Right.
None of us think he's going to be there.
So anyway, I went back and I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take Genty, because I think if the Jaguars do take Graham and there's no trades, the Raiders have been linked to Genty. We're being very chalky here, but that's what happens in that scenario, right? Like, the Raiders are just going to press the easy button and take Ashton Genty.
Well, one would think so, but the Raiders have a long history of doing wacky things in the draft. And it just seems like it never matters who is the GM there. You know, they're always like doing stuff that make you kind of scratch your head immediately, and then you look back years after and you're like, "Oh, that really didn't work out, did it?"
I don't see the Raiders. I don't see Genty falling past 6.
I don't either. I
whether
think,
it's the Jags or Raiders or somebody coming up, he'll be gone by pick
Genty
6.
feels very much like a Pete Carroll type.
Also true.
right.
Their number 2 and 3 receivers are Trey Tucker, who had 539 yards last year, and Kyle Phillips, who I guess they signed from the Titans, who didn't have a single stat last year. So
They really need a receiver.
Yeah,
too, but
but like
their number 1 receiver is Brock Bowers.
right.
that's fair.
And even in like kind of a weak, quote unquote weak receiver class, I still think that's always that's a position you can find contributors in day 2 or even day 3, and I just don't think that prospects like Genty come along that often. Even in a really good running back class, I think he is truly like can't miss. He's going to be a stud player for the next 10 years.
All right, so we went ahead and I took Genty with the Raiders at 6. That brings us to pick number 7. Matt, you were the New York Jets. Which direction did you go?
I had Membu from Missouri. Armand
Membu from Cameroon.
They have everyone's favorite tackle from last year's show, Olu Fashanu, as their left tackle because Tyron Smith retired, and then Morgan Moses signed with the Patriots this offseason. So they need some help on the offensive line. Feels like the Jets always do. And so I just went kind of chalky there. Seems like a nice, safe pick for this new regime. I could also see them being interested in Tyler Warren. It's been the other pick that's really been kind of connected to them. But, I just think they go conventional here.
I think the Jets are kind of a pivot point too, because they could go O-line, they could go Warren. I think they could also go defense. You know, Aaron Glenn's first year, does he want a defensive player? So this is one of those picks where it feels like things could shake down one way or the other for the Saints.
Yeah.
So that's 7. Pick number 8 is the Carolina Panthers. That was you, Rod. And just to kind of complete the octet of chalk picks.
Yeah, I went with Jalen Walker. I just figured he was a good pick for that team. And I know if I didn't pick him, we probably all would have picked him with who was left on the board. So I went with Jalen Walker. I just think he's the best player available at this point. And obviously you can always use a guy like that to shore up your defense. So I thought it was a pretty easy choice.
I really like him.
Yeah,
I think we all. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think we all really.
Yeah.
I've been pounding that table for.
Pounding the drum.
Yeah, hey, bang the drum. Yeah, but he's one of my favorite players in this class. But like, he's one that has been tied to Carolina throughout this process. I think he grew up in the Charlotte area.
Yeah.
Like only like 30 minutes away from Charlotte. They have kind of a weird history of drafting guys recently who were Charlotte area natives. I think they're the left tackle they drafted a couple years ago, Icky Aquanu?
Yeah.
Aquanu. Xavier Legette last year. It wouldn't surprise me if they made it 3 in a row.
If I didn't pick Jalen, we all probably picked him.
I mean, I think I would have been on the Jalen Walker train. Yeah. That kind of leads me to, if it does go chalk like this and these are the 8 guys gone, we talked about scenarios last week. Is that the worst case scenario for the Saints? I mean, it feels like any of those 8 players are guys they would have been interested in. And if all 8 of them are gone.
I mean, like, yes, you'd love to have one of those guys there for you. But I still think that there's a lot of guys that we have to choose from who are going to be really good players. I still think no matter what happens, they're going to have a really good player there for him at 9. And in fact, I'm very excited to make my pick because he's one of the guys that I've liked throughout this process too.
All right. I'm not excited to make this pick. I'll explain why in a minute. But now that we'll recap the top 8 picks real quick. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, Armand Membu, and Jalen Walker. So now at number 9, the rest of the draft class is on the board. Rod Walker, where are you going if you are Mickey Loomis at number 9?
Let's clarify that this is what Mickey Loomis is doing and not what Rod Walker
Because
doing.
Rod Walker would
pick the guy who had his jersey retired.
Shedeur Sanders would be in the black and gold like Dion
based
predicted.
on merit alone.
Nepo baby.
So yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of assume that the Saints aren't going to go at quarterback, but I still think that, same thing I've said for the past however long we've been doing this. I think Shedeur's going to be a really good player, and I think when we look back on this draft, I think people are going to, realize how good he is. But for this, I ended up picking Mikael Williams from Georgia, edge rusher. One of the things that Kellen Moore said, and Mickey Loomis even said today that, Kellen likes to kind of build his teams from the inside out, starting with the defensive and offensive line. So I think that's probably the best guy on the board, and that's what I roll with on this pick.
Yeah, Michael
I don't
Williams.
really like this pick either. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, Michael Williams, the bigger of the 2 Georgia edge rushers. He's more of the traditional lineman versus Jalen Walker, who's a linebacker, who's more of a situational pass rush guy. But if Walker's off the board, Williams probably fits more of the Saints mold at defensive end anyway.
Well, at least their previous mold.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know if is that a Jeff Ireland thing? Was that more of a Dennis Allen thing? I mean, we don't know. So my pick here, if I had to make one, is Teteroa McMillan. I'm taking the wide receiver. I just think the Saints could use it. It fits so perfectly well what they need in the receiver room. And I'm just not enamored with any of the linemen left at this point. But honestly, I would be fielding calls to try to move back if this was, because I think those top 8 guys would be the top 8 guys on my personal board. And if they're all gone, I wouldn't mind picking at 13 or 14 and picking up an extra, say 3rd rounder. I would definitely be interested in that. Now, whether you could find a partner to do that, I don't know. But McMillan does give you that bigger receiver. You can run him over the middle. You can protect Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed a little bit more, and I think the Saints ought to be interested in that, even at number 9.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I think he fits what they've been trying to fill on this roster ever since Michael Thomas hurt his ankle in week 1 of the 2021, was it 2020 season.
2020.
They've been trying and failing to find like a possession receiver, and he's a perfect complement to what they have. That said, I don't think I'd want to take him. He was in my very first mock draft, and I've kind of cooled out. And there's been that stuff about like the film study, and I think that stuff is, well, it's probably overblown from a years old video saying like somebody doesn't like to watch film. I think that stuff does matter to the Saints, and it would be a little surprising to me if he's the pick there. But I do think that as a player, there's a lot to love, especially when you're talking about fit on this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. But you went in a different direction with one of your favorites.
Yeah, and this I think is probably more of a Luke Johnson mock draft pick than a Mickey Loomis Saints organization mock draft pick. But I went with Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, who I think is just, when we listen to Mickey talk today, he's like, look, we need to hit on a draft pick. You're picking number 9 overall. Like, you can't take a swing and miss. Can't be a bust. Like, it needs to be somebody who's going to come in and play at a high enough level that you can count on him right away. And he wants somebody who's going to be with the organization for the next 8 to 10 years. When I look at what's available right now, I see some tackles that are interesting, but come with question marks. Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State, who I think could be an interesting pick here, but like, he's coming off a major injury. The Saints are a team that is coming off of major injuries. I don't know if I want to gamble on that.
Yeah,
I think 9 is too rich for somebody like Josh Connerly.
Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks is like an interior player. Like, do you want to use a top 10 pick on a guard? I don't know. I mean, like, I think when you're looking at this and you see, okay, I've got this guy who caught 104 passes for a Big Ten team last year and averaged 8 yards a carry as a Wildcat quarterback, and is 6'6" and 250 pounds, and he's a good blocker. Like, that guy's not going to miss. He's going to be a really good player. He might never be Brock Bowers, where he's catching 112 balls a year, but he might be a catch 75 pass a year tight end for the next 8 years. If they get like Mark Andrews in this spot, you feel really, really, really good about it. So while I think there's probably a better chance, just considering Kellen Moore's history and what he's said about how he wants to build the team, what we heard Mickey Loomis say today, that they take an offensive or defensive lineman here. It's what we've seen the Saints do for the last umpteen years. I do think that, like, if it were me, I would take the guy who I feel very, very comfortably about hitting and hitting at a high level.
I would agree with that. I picked Williams, but just to build on that point, like, I think Warren, I've said this before, but I think he's the type of piece that Kellen Moore could unlock or be kind of a tone setter for what Kellen Moore wants to accomplish here in New Orleans. Like, he could be that foundational piece for your offense that you can move around, that you can use in different ways. Like, you just did a huge story on Kellen Moore's roots and his way of thinking, and I think he's the type of puzzle piece that really could feed into that, that you could move him around. And so I would pick Warren as well. But I don't know. I just kind of get the sense that they'll fall back to, there was that Adam Schefter report that they're leaning either an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. That is what they always do. And Michael Williams really seems like the type of player that they've always liked. He's raw. Like, the thing I kind of noticed too about what Mickey Loomis said is he said 8 to 10 years, but he didn't say that he had to be a home run pick from year one. Like, I think they would give him some time to develop. There are a lot of bodies up front. You would want him to play right away. You would hope that he can, but I think they maybe would try and be a little patient with him. And, yeah, he just seems like their type of pick. Oh, and this is what I just remembered, is we talked about what is Brandon Staley like. Does he want smaller edge rushers? Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are big dudes. It's not like those guys are super small, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like,
I think Mac is probably a little smaller than the Saints prototype. Mac's probably like, I don't know, like 6'3", 250, something like that, just off the top of my head.
Well, then that would be more closer to Jalen Walker's more 6'1".
Edge rusher is weird because
Mike Green, for instance.
You're right. They do have bodies, but do they have quality?
No, they need a star.
Like they need somebody to crack that lineup and kind of displace some people and push them down the depth chart. And nothing against Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's had an unbelievable career here, but if he's your second best pass rusher or even your third best pass rusher after Young and Granderson, like you don't have a very good pass rush then.
Well, and this is the thing that So they've got the bodies on the edges right now, right? To be their defensive ends. I don't think they have a stand-up rusher on this team. They haven't added one in free agency. That still seems like a gap for me. But I don't know if there's anybody that I feel comfortable like in that role taking besides Jalen Walker at this point in the draft.
Yeah.
So, like if they feel like they can't add that. That kind of Sam 3-4 linebacker who's gonna be a stand-up pass rusher at 9. Maybe you can find that somewhere later in the draft and you can address like the kind of big uglies up front.
Another thing that Mickey Loomis was also saying today was that he didn't break with the ranks. He views this as a very deep defensive line class, and so maybe
he really didn't want to say that, but he did
not, but he did. But so does he feel like maybe they can address it later on? I think this is the part where them actually needing a quarterback complicates that matter. Like, you can put off I use cornerback as an example, but I think the same thing is defensive line. Like, if you were to take a cornerback in round 2 or defensive line, like that's what they would have done, I think, in other years. But now them needing a quarterback, I think, complicates that.
Okay, so that's a good segue. Let's do some takeaways here from this mock. I'll start here. The odds on DraftKings right now for the number 9 pick, Mykel Williams is the favorite, and that price has actually only gone up since I checked this morning. I think it was like plus 370 this morning. It's plus 270 now.
What does that mean?
That means that the market thinks the Saints are more likely to take Mykel Williams than they did even this morning.
Got it.
Okay. So people who track this stuff obsessively and pay attention to it are seeing the smoke around Mykel Williams. The second choice is Kelvin Banks at 6-1. Tyler Warren's third. And here it gets grouped real close together. Kelvin Banks, Tyler Warren, Shamar Stewart, Mason Graham, Tyler Booker. So all offensive or defensive linemen except for Tyler Warren in that top 6. And then you get to Jackson Dart as the next choice at 10-1.
Let's hit on Banks real quick. I wouldn't hate it if he can. I'd actually maybe more like it at guard. I think people maybe would jump to the conclusion that the other notable news today from Mickey Loomis's press conference was that they're declining the 5th-year option on Trevor Penning, and so maybe they aren't as sold on Penning after last year, even though Penning had a career year.
And to be clear, the career year was like just basically a league average right guard.
Yeah.
Yes,
The ball was
right
already low, and he just
yes, he showed that he could play. Yay!
Still waiting on Foskey to show that, by the way. If we're talking about low bars.
And so, maybe they try there, but I don't know, man. Like, I think he was fine. I think you can maybe put off. It just depends. Like, I think they can put it off just a little longer. And if you really feel like iffy about that spot, I don't know who else is out there, but like you could try and sign someone like, what is it, after June 1 where the comp pick formula doesn't matter anymore. Like you can try and see what else is out there. But I don't know. I don't think tackle as big of it. Like if I were to rank the Saints needs from like 1 to 10 or 1 to whatever, like I think I would put tackle maybe in the middle of the pack rather than like high.
Okay. The name in that odds list that intrigues me is Mason Graham. because you talked about how you almost took Genty at 5 with Jacksonville. If that were to happen, if Jacksonville either trades the pick to, say, Chicago, who takes Genty, or the Jaguars take Genty themselves, and then the Raiders go, I don't know, Membu, Jets, Warren, Panthers, Jalen Walker, all of a sudden Mason Graham could fall to the Saints. Like, it's a legitimate possibility now. If that were to happen, are you running the card up? I mean, is that an obvious pick? He's a run-stuffing defensive tackle. He seems to be exactly what this team needs. He's also not necessarily a guy who fits their profile of like a really good athlete. So what would the Saints do if Mason Graham's available?
I mean,
I think they get him if he's there. I mean, I don't know who else we're talking about that's left on the board, but
Yeah, I mean, I think if
well, we'd just be taking
Mason
Tyler
Graham
Warren
and
off.
Jalen-
yeah, I take
We just
Tyler
take
Warren
Tyler
off because
Warren
I think then the Raiders maybe go Membu, and then the Jets go Warren. I think that would probably be what
so
happens.
Jalen Walker's.
So no, and then the
he's not
Panthers go Walker.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think you take Mason Graham in that scenario.
I mean, he's been the guy. He's been my guy since the fall. Like, I think he's exactly what this team needs. The run defense up the middle has been so bad. I'd take him and don't look back.
Yeah, I would take him too. I think there's some pretty intriguing defensive tackle prospects in this class. Like Walter Nolan, one of them from Ole Miss. Kenneth Grant. A couple guys from Texas who I think could be good players for different reasons, but I think Graham is head and shoulders above the rest of them, and it's really been a weak spot for this team. Even that I like Brian Brzee, but like I think he's at this point of his career, he's still just like kind of a situational player. He's a good pass rusher and doesn't give you a lot else. I think you could shore up a lot of that with somebody like Mason Graham. Even with Devon Godshaw in here, even with bringing back Colin Saunders and Nathan Shepard, and you got your first round pick from a couple of years ago in Brzee, I think he's still somebody who can make this team better immediately.
And I think to follow up on that, like, you signed Juwan Johnson to a new deal. You brought back Chase Young. Like, none of the Saints moves this offseason have stopped me from looking at number 9 and being like, all right, this is off the board because of those previous moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Godshaw is like that acquisition is the same lines. If Graham is there, sorry, maybe you play like only on first and second down now instead of all three, or sorry, maybe you're only coming in like a Christian Boyd type. Like, it's not. That does not prevent you from choosing a potential All-Pro.
And to that point, the Juwan Johnson contract doesn't prevent them from taking somebody like Tyler Warren either.
Correct. No, they haven't. They have holes literally at every position except for kicker and safety. I mean, like, you could see them.
They need good young players.
Yeah.
Hands down.
To me, Mason Graham would be the type of guy who would come in and make an immediate impact, and a guy who also would be on your team for 8 to 10 years, like Mickey's talking about. So to me, that's if that happens, that's a home run for the Saints. Now let's shift focus quickly to their second pick, and I put that on the graphic too. Second pick, not necessarily second round. I mean, do they trade up back into the first round to get a quarterback whom they would have a 5th-year option on? Or maybe they trade up early into the second round. Maybe they can sit tight at 40 and get somebody like Tyler Shuck. We'll see how the board falls. But do you guys see that as a legitimate possibility?
I think they're going to have to trade into the back half of the first round, or the back quarter of the first round, if they're going to get one. Because in this scenario we talked about, neither the Browns nor the Giants take a quarterback 2 or 3. But they hold the first 2 picks of the second round. I think if you want to make sure that you get that guy, you have to jump those 2 teams.
And then
you may have to jump
the Steelers at 21. And then the other team that's been somewhat linked to a quarterback is the Rams at 26, I believe, who could be looking for their Matt Stafford successor. So, I mean, I think you have to, if there's one guy that you want above the others after, in that range, you have to go get him, I think.
Are the Vikings pick 23?
24.
24. You think about, they traded up last year for Dallas Turner.
They
already traded back into the first round before that to get they depleted some of their draft capital, and so I can see them being a team that would want to maybe move back, restore those assets, and that would allow you to maybe move up to jump the Rams. Another spot. 2 other spots. One, if you want to hit the bell.
29?
29, the Washington Commanders. They just did previous business in the fall. They even gave back one of the original picks to New Orleans. It was like their 6th rounder originally. Maybe they give back Washington their extra 3rd. And Philadelphia has shown a willingness to trade out before. I think the last time they won the Super Bowl, they traded out at 32 as well. So 24, 29, 32, I think those are the pivotal spots of if you want to trade up for a quarterback, maybe those are the ones.
Yeah, because you got to get ahead of the Browns and Giants, who look like they're in the market for a late first, early second round quarterback too.
Especially if the Steelers take Shador, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or Jackson Dart, right? Like the Steelers take a quarterback, and then now you're looking at like, okay, Shador or Dart, Tyler Shuck,
Jalen Milroe.
I think Milroe is like kind of fascinating as a player, but like if you are a team who's saying we're going to count on this guy as a rookie to be our
He's more of
starting
a
quarterback,
project.
there's going to be like a package for Jalen Milroe, whatever team he lands on right away. But like asking him to take on the full workload of an NFL quarterback in year one, I think is way too big of a gamble because he's just got some development to do as a passer.
The unfortunate thing for the Saints is if they are in a situation where they are forced to trade up, man, you need those picks. Like we've talked about how many holes they have. You need a guard somewhere.
This is the interesting part too.
Need a corner.
For the site the other day, NOLA.com, you could read all about it. I looked at the price to jump back into the first round, and it was like it wasn't exactly 50-50, but one of the central questions I would have if the Saints have to do if they do trade back is would they have to give away like a future 2026 pick, or could they just package what they have now? And what would you rather do if you were the Saints? Like, would you rather give up? You know, you have 2 third-round picks. Would you rather give up each of those, or would you rather give up a 2026 second?
Which could end up being in the 30s. I mean, if you don't have a good year
Which is
like
basically
that,
like a first round
that would
pick.
end
That's
up being
like a
a
first
high
round
pick.
Yeah.
Here's what I would rather do. Don't trade your picks. Don't take a quarterback. Start Spencer Rattler. And if he's awful in year one, then you're looking at the Arch Manning sweepstakes next year. Or Garrett Nussmeier. Or Drew Aller. Or whoever does the Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow thing and blows up and you're like, wow, that's a top 5 pick. Like, I think that's what I would do. If this season's just going to tank and you're just like, well, maybe Jackson Dart will be the guy, or maybe Shador, or maybe Tyler Shuck. It's like, well, or maybe you could just see what you got, and if he's no good, then you're sitting pretty for next year. I think that's.
Do you think that that's a possibility, though?
I think
No.
that's a possibility even if they take a quarterback, though. That's why I would still draft one.
But are you giving you've given up
I see
more
what you're
assets
saying.
to draft
I'm
one
saying
and still
yes,
be terrible? I mean, that's
but I don't think if you draft Jackson Dart and he's terrible, well, you took the swing, you found out that he's terrible, and you're back in the quarterback. Like, that's not ideal, obviously, but if this quarterback draft next year is much stronger than this one, like the absolutely thing you should not do is if you take a quarterback and he plays okay, maybe like, and they have a top 5 pick, well, we don't need a quarterback because our rookie quarterback played okay. Like, no, you should.
The Daniel Jones.
The
Well,
Daniel
that to
Jones, the
me
Dwayne
is why-
Haskins.
you 100% cannot take a quarterback at number 9. That's why. Because unless you are, these guys are all like, nah, maybe if I squint hard enough, or if he develops, like you can't use that on a top
Unless
10
you're
pick 2 years in a row. Like I just don't.
Rod doesn't have to squint to see
I ain't gotta
Shador's
squint.
bright lights.
I don't have to squint to see Shador getting sacked.
If Shador gets traded after year 1 of being here, they would trade Rod with him. He'd go to Shador's new team.
One of the things Mickey did say is that, they have to love the guy. It's not going to be like,
Yeah.
they're not going to squint. I mean, I think they're going to have to. So if they
Wouldn't it
do
be great,
draft,
though, if he was just like, yeah, he could be okay. We would take him.
Yeah. Yeah, what is it going to say, right? I do look forward to getting Dion on this podcast if Shador's the pick, Rod. You got to go to work on that for us.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do, man.
All right. Okay, that's a good place to end. Hey, we're going to be live tomorrow. I think we're going to start at 6:30. So 35 minutes before the draft starts. Jim Derry and I will be hosting the Saints Insider live draft show. These guys are all going to join intermittently from the Saints facility to give their takes and their reaction. We're going to follow every pick live. We actually get the picks before the TV broadcast does because we're scouring Twitter, because we're X, sorry. And
Because we're
You-
insiders and find out ourselves.
yeah, that's right.
you get the picks by
Not
having,
Adam Schefter or Ian
by having
Rappaport. It was
notifications on for
definitely me.
Albert Breer.
Gabe Henderson is like really good at finding this stuff, and he's going to be behind the scenes.
That's
putting the
called
picks in.
aggregation, folks.
Yes. So no matter how we do it, you will get the picks faster watching our show than you will watching the live broadcast. So tune in. It'll be on this YouTube channel. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Sign up for notification, and that will remind you when we're going live tomorrow. And we're also we'll go live Friday too, but not for the whole night. We'll see how many picks the Saints have.
Please.
Yeah, we're not going to do that for the whole night Friday, but depending on which picks the Saints have left, we'll do it a little bit then too. So tune in, and we'll be back with regular podcasts next week. For our producer, Norman Bell, he's Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching. Happy draft day, and good night.
Take Tyler Warren.